Hi, I'm Marnie Downing, and this is my case study for EDL 856. It's Module 10, a new role for the parent organization. So first we're going to summarize the case. We have the unknown school district. Much is unknown. It's not really mentioned in the case study. We don't know if it's small or urban or rural. It doesn't really mention that. It doesn't mention it at all. We have the unknown school is also unknown. It's not mentioned in the case study. We can infer from the involvement of the parents that it's probably an elementary school. Most parents, by the time they get in, kids are in junior high or high school, the parent organizations aren't as strong. So we can assume that it's an elementary school. Next, we have the principal himself. That's obviously, it must be a principal. I'm basing that on the pronoun that's used because it's used as the masculine pronoun of he. He has concerns about the new parent organization, especially when the group decided to no longer be affiliated with the national PTA. He felt that the former PTA had been very supportive and cooperative in the past in their very traditional role. The principal decided to meet with representatives on the new parent organization to discuss the annual back-to-school night program he had planned. The meeting, however, did not go as he had planned. The new president of the organization clearly and assertively stated the new parent organization's plans to be more involved in the daily running of the school. The parent organization had already created committees to discuss and create policies in the areas of discipline, teacher performance, curriculum, and total school evaluation. Also, the parent organization planned for teachers to create and present various parent trainings the week of the back-to-school night program. The teachers would also be required to create and present various parent trainings the week of the parent-teacher conferences, which would be held during American Education Week. And this coming year, that would be the week before Thanksgiving, so November 15th through the 19th. The principal attempted to ask a question during the meeting, but the president of the parent organization just continued to speaking and ignored the question. The principal was taken aback by the meeting and wondered why he had been left out of this discussion. After the meeting, he was left with a great feeling of concern on how to proceed. He was all for parent involvement, but there were limits. He would be the one to implement the policies and ultimately be responsible, and wish the parents could see they placed him in an untenable position. Next, we have the new parent organization. It is newly formed. There had always been a very traditional PTA, but they changed and created a new one. The group had decided to sever ties with the national PTA and discontinue their affiliation with the association. They elected a new president and formed committees in the areas of concerns for parents. The organization would like to be much more involved with the running of the school and move away from the traditional model of parent involvement. The new parent organization hoped to work with the administration and was counting on the principal's support for this. Next, we have the new president. He is not mentioned by name. He is a very assertive, energetic young attorney. He clearly stated the parent organization wanted to be more involved in the decision-making and policy-making of the school. He believes that parents have something to contribute and should be an equal partner in the decision-making. He helped create the new parent organization and the parent committees. Now we have the new parent organization committees. These were created by the president and the officers of the new parent organization. They created committees for discipline, teacher performance, curriculum, and total school evaluation. The committees planned on meeting regularly during the school year, observing conditions in the school, collecting data from students, parents, and teachers, and issuing policy statements on needed changes. So let's talk quite a bit actually about some legal and ethical issues. I actually have 2 slides to cover on these particular issues. First, we're going to talk about FERPA. So that is, there was a committee. The concern here is there would be a committee, a parent committee, gathering data from students, or student data is a major concern. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act is a federal law that protects the privacy of a student's educational records. The law applies to all schools that receive funds under the applicable program of the U.S. Department of Education. Parents or eligible students have the right to inspect and review the student's educational records maintained by the school. This applies to parents, guardians, their personal children only, not all children. Next, we have what is called SDPA. This is the Kansas Student Data Privacy Act. It prohibits the unauthorization, disclosure of student data, and personally identifiable student data, the unauthorized collection of biometric data from a student, and the unauthorized use of any device or mechanism to assist a student's psychological or emotional state. It also requires notification to the student affected by a breach or an unauthorized disclosure of a student's data of personally identifiable information. Personally identifiable student data is defined in this law, KSA 726313, as student data that alone or in combination is linked or linkable to a specific student and would allow a reasonable person to identify the student with reasonable certainty. So here's another issue about student data. We have the PPRA, which is the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, offers parents of elementary and secondary students certain rights regarding the conduct of surveys, collection and use of information for marketing purposes, or certain physical exams. Parents have the right to give consent before students are required to submit a survey that concerns one or more protected areas, receive notes, and an opportunity to opt out of student surveys, physical exams, and collection of data to be used in marketing or to sell the information, and inspect the surveys and instructional material used as part of the educational program. So all of those laws deal with your personal student, your personal child when they go to school. It doesn't mean that every parent has access to every child's information, only their own personal children. The next law that we're going to discuss is IDEA. This is the Individuals with Disability Education Act that guarantees that all students with an IEP have the right to confidentiality. IDEA does not clearly state parents are able to observe their personal child who has an IEP or not in the educational setting, including the special education classrooms and related services. A group or a committee of parents do not have the right to observe children with an IEP in any educational setting. It would be a breach of confidentiality for those children. It is up to the local school district to determine how and when a parent may observe their child in a current classroom or a proposed educational placement. So as a biological parent of a child, you or an adopted parent of a child or a guardian, you're able to go in and observe your child who has an IEP in all educational settings. But that doesn't mean that you can observe any children at any time that are not a child that you are personally responsible for. Next, we have the Student Discipline Handbook. So when we're talking about making changes to discipline statements, we have to remember there should be, and most schools have, a Student Discipline Handbook. Most school districts, including Buckland, have a student handbook which clearly defines the consequences of inappropriate behavior in the classroom or at the school or on school grounds. Usually those handbooks and discipline procedures are sent to the school lawyer or legal representative to determine if the procedures are lawful. Therefore, parents have little say in the handbook themselves. However, they can create improvement in deciding a school-wide discipline curriculum such as CHAMPS. So we can talk about, doing positive reinforcement and those sort of things, but as far as determining how the consequences of because of certain actions of children at school, a lot of that has to do with those handbooks that are already designed and okayed by the district themselves. Last on this particular slide, we have ESSA, which is Every Student Succeeds Acts. Now this talks about parent involvement. Parent involvement means the participation of parents in a regular two-way and meaningful communication involving student academic learning and other school activities. Parents play an integral role in assisting their child's education at school and their children's learning. Parents are encouraged to be actively involved in their child's education. Parents are full partners in their child's education and are included as appropriate in decision making and on advisory committees to assist in the education of their child. Parents should have access to parent-teacher conferences, frequent reports on their child's progress, reasonable access to staff, opportunities to volunteer and participate in their child's class, observation of classroom activities, and two-way communication in language that family members understand. So parents do and should be involved in schools. That's very obvious. But it seems like this parent organization maybe stepped over that line. So now we're going to talk about the legal and ethical issues when we're talking about teachers themselves. So first of all, teachers are going to have a negotiated agreement. All licensed or certified staff members are covered under their negotiated agreement. The negotiated agreement should cover teacher observations, teacher evaluations, dirty times, extracurricular activities, and how they will be compensated for work outside of their duty day or school day. My concern here is teachers cannot be asked to take on extra duties outside of their current duty time, such as parent trainings in the evenings, without the time and compensation for their time being negotiated. Personally, I think parent trainings are imperative. However, you do have to work through the right channels. Next, we have the state guidelines for teacher evaluation and of observation. The state of Kansas does have very specific rules and requirements for the evaluation process of the teachers. This does not include observation by groups or committees of parents. So next we have state standards. State standards. Each state has a clearly defined set of standards that determines the curriculum taught in the schools. Each school district does have the responsibility to determine the curriculum materials used in their schools. Some districts allow teachers and administration to have say in those materials, some do not. In the case where schools do have some say in what curriculum materials will be used, should be involved in parents in those decisions, it would be crucial to make sure that you have parents involved in those decisions. In the policy statements themselves. Most policy statements come from the district, and administrators at the building level have little say in those policies, making it challenging for building level administrators to involve parents in policy statements when and where it's appropriate. So let's talk about what's happened. After meeting with the president of the newly formed parent organization and learning that new parental committees have been formed, the principal is concerned about responding to the situation in such a way that does not alienate the parents and does not upset the school's educational programs. So who's involved? We have the principal. Much is unknown about him. We don't even know his name. We don't know how old he is, how long he's been a principal, how many years of experience does he have in the education field. How does the staff feel about him? Is he well liked? Is he seen as impartial and fair? Does he work to create meaningful relationships with all staffs and students? Does he promote the well-being of his staff and students? He has involved parents in the past, but in a very traditional and occasional way. And parents don't seem to be involved in a meaningful way at his school. We have the new president of the new parent organization. He's a young, energetic, assertive attorney. He was newly elected president to the new parent organization. He must have elementary age children. How many? How old is he? He did meet the principal to explain the new parent organization thoughts on parental involvement, parent committees, and parent trainings given by teachers during Back to School Week and American Education Week. He seems to have the assumption that the parent committee should have access to student data, teacher observation and performance, and the ability to write and implement policy states for issues the parent organizations deem needing to be changed. Next, we have the parents of the new parent organization. Much is unknown. We don't even know how many it is. What are the views on most of these parents of the organization? How many officers were elected to govern the parent organization? How many parents are involved in this newly formed committees? How many parents are on each committee? Is the president and officers involved in each committee? And does each committee report back to the president? And next we have the superintendent of our district. He is a complete unknown and not mentioned in the case study at all. So where is this happening? Obviously, it's happening in the unknown school. Once again, we don't know much about this school. We know nothing at all. We don't know how many teachers does. Oh, I'm sorry. We're talking about the unknown school district first. It's not, once again, not mentioned in the case study. We don't know how many teachers are employed by the district, how many superintendents, what's the population, is there a diverse student body, how does the staff represent this diversity? Then we have the unknown school itself. Much is unknown. It's not mentioned in the case study. What is the student population? How many are on free and reduced lunches? Is there a diverse population of students? How many staff members? How many teachers? Are most of the teachers new teachers or veterans teachers? Is there a diverse population of staff members? Does the staff reflect the diversity of the student population? How many administrators are there? What are their duties? Is the school well or poor performing? Does the school district struggle to adequately staff this school? Are there instructional coaches? If so, how many? Are there guidance counselors? If so, how many? What is their role in the school? Do they counsel students, or do they just handle the scheduling? Is this building old or new? Is it accessible to all students and staff? Is the school set up by teams, and are the classrooms arranged accordingly? Is there technology readily accessible to staff and students? What does a professional development look like? What is the culture of the school? Does the administration work to create a collaborative, inclusive, and diverse culture? How often are administrators in the classrooms? What are the school incentives? What are their foundational structures for KISA? How are those being promoted? Are teachers required to turn in lesson plans? Have all curriculum maps been completed for each subject, including any extra classes? Are the curriculum maps aligned between the grade levels in specific subject areas? That was a mouthful. Okay, next we have the principal's office. It's not mentioned in the case study. We can assume the meeting between the principal and the parent organization happened in this office. That's my assumption. So next, we have what programs are involved. We have first we have the unknown school district. It's not mentioned in the case study. Are there any policies for parent involvement that's by the school district? And what are other schools doing to promote parent involvement in the school district? Next, we have the unknown school district. It's not mentioned in the case study. I'm sorry, we're looking at the unknown school, not the unknown school district. It's not unknown school. It's not mentioned in the case study. Is there a student handbook for discipline procedures? Is there a building leadership team? Then we have the administrative team. Only the principal is mentioned in the case study, and not much is mentioned about him. It is unknown how many administrators there are. Is he the only principal, or is there an assistant principal? Then we have the new parent organization. There has been a parent organization for a number of years that was affiliated with the National PTA. The parents of the school decided to no longer be affiliated with this association and created a new parent organization. It is important to the parents to be more involved with the school and to promote community involvement. They did elect a new president and other officers, along with creating multiple parent committees. Okay, now we're going to review and analyze and talk about some stakeholders. So, once again, we have an unknown town. Don't know anything about that. We can assume that their schools are very important to their town, because most towns believe that. Next, we have the parents. Parents have created a new parent organization. The parents are very concerned about parent participation in community involvement, and they elected a new president and officers and created parent committees. Now, we don't know how many parents that is. I mean, I'm assuming that it's the majority of the parents. It may not be. It may be a very small faction. So that was something that you would definitely need to consider when you're making these decisions. The school board. The school board is not mentioned in the case study. We can assume it is an elective school board and not appointed. Is there a parent from the unknown school on the school board? How many minorities are on the school board? Or are they all Caucasian? Are minorities adequately represented in the running of the school district? Does the board have value? Does the school value parents being involved in working toward parent involvement? Or have they been purposely exclusionary on those issues? Next, we have the community members. Once again, they're not mentioned. Does the community use the school for community events? It is no doubt that the unknown town schools are important to the community members. Often schools are a major employer in towns both large and small. The superintendent is not mentioned in the case study. We have the staff of the unknown school. The school staff is not mentioned in the case study. We have questions about how many counselors, principals, numbers of teachers per grade, elective teachers, number of special educators, number of office staff, number of pairs, both special education and otherwise. And lastly, we have the staff of the unknown school district, and much is unknown. How many, the number of minorities as teachers and high-level positions, are they well paid? Is the pay fair and based on experience? So let's talk about some strategies here. What strategies are effective for communicating school and student success to families and the community? Okay, you need to pick one tool. Find a platform for every educator to use. Will increase buy-in from all stakeholders and will enhance success in engaging parents. Ensure shorter, more frequent communications. Communications to be concise and frequent to keep stakeholders in the loop on an ongoing basis. Personalize. Give parents the option to subscribe to channels featuring updates they will receive, ensuring the information they receive is relevant and they don't get lost in information overload. Make sure that you build relationships. Focus on building relationships with parents and stakeholders to establish trust and foster those relationships throughout the year. Share accountability. Make it clear that all faculty members are expected to participate in the school's two-way communication efforts. Provide clear guidance, proper tools and protocols, and to make it actionable. Share the positive. Find the opportunities to communicate good news. Next, how can a school leader involve families in decision-making about their children's education? You need to make sure you connect them to school resources. Putting parents in touch with school resources can make your connections with them meaningful and individualized. Parent volunteering. Families will feel more involved in the school community with hands-on involvement. Parent trainings or workshops. Facilitate parent trainings or workshops. Parent-teacher committees. Give parents an outlet to make their voice heard and keep them up to date with class and school events. Engaged parents can help plan and implement these events. Parent surveys. Send out at the beginning of the year and after each quarter of this semester. Home visits. This can not only improve student, parent, and teacher relations, but can give you a better idea of a child's home life. Next, what strategies could a school leader use to communicate with parents and the community about when English is not the primary language or where many languages are spoken? Ask about their language preference for the conference. Don't assume that because English is their second language, they aren't comfortable in speaking it. Never ask a child to translate, no matter their age. Allow them to be the student, not the translator. Provide your own translator. Get to know them and their culture. Let them know that while it is important to find a way to communicate, you also find it essential to know a little about their culture and their language. Provide all written communications in the family's native language. Provide real-life, authentic ways they can help their children. Schools can teach the academics, but they can help provide their child with real-world experiences that they can share and talk about them together in their own language. Make sure they leave knowing that their culture and language are essential to the diversity of the class and the school community as a whole. Make sure all families in your school know you celebrate and rejoice having a culturally, linguistically diverse school community. What criteria should be considered in developing programs, committees, or activities that include the community? You need to start small. Before diving into a long-term partnership, start with a project that is small and defined in scope. Develop a shared vision. A shared vision will help partners work together toward mutual success. Define leadership on both sides. In order to encourage effective communication and collaboration among partners, both parties should agree on who will own the relationship and who can communicate progress and challenges to improve the experiences. Acknowledge the role of your partners as educators. While not all teachers in the traditional sense, partners are also serving as educators and should be empowered to share their knowledge and expertise. Manageable and sustained is better than a one-time opportunity. Students who have multiple opportunities to interact with an organization and a project over the course of a school year can develop deeper relationships and understanding than those who can only have a single experience. Make sure your students are engaged in real work. Students can sense when a project is only busy work. How can a school leader use community resources to support learning? Expand your vision of school to include your community. We need to find ways to connect core curriculum beyond the classroom by attracting the right people and asking the right questions. Reach out to all stakeholders. Share your dreams for enhanced community school partnerships and ask people what matters to them. Ask them how they might help and show them your passion. Create a community resource map. A visual representation of your community and various skills people have offered is a super way to understand what community resources are available. Connect with curriculum. Let's find a way to work with local businesses and subject matter experts to connect core curriculum to the outside world and design engaging learning experiences in and out of the classroom. A design challenge for community. Reinventing school can mean a lot of things, such as redesigning classrooms, creating a community garden, creating an open and shared learning space, designing a course, changing the way students participate in decision-making, you name it. Okay, first we're going to evaluate and develop. We're going to talk about my first option. The first option here, the principal could do nothing. And I guess just hope for the best. Now, the pros of this particular option is it keeps a peace and it will probably be easier. Maybe in the short term, I don't think that would be easier in the long term. The con of this, or the many cons of this, is he will not be doing his job to the best of his ability. The parent committees may cause considerable problems for teachers, students, and staff. The president of the parent organization will feel free to make any changes, and this will damage the principal's reputation as a fair and an impartial school leader. The next option, I call it my harsh option. The harsh option would be that I would be very harsh with the new parent organization president, new parent organization, and with and probably the superintendent out of the whole issue. So this would be that I would emphatically call the president back in and emphatically tell him that in no way was I willing to work with them at all. That what they came up with was silly and unprofessional and not necessary, and there was no way I was letting them back into my school, and on and on and on and on, which is just going to further alienate them. So let's talk about the pros for this. It will be easier for the principal. The parents there's no way that we'll have too much control over any educational programs. However, the cons are there is no plan for involving parents and or guardians. It damages your relationship with those parents and guardians. It damages my reputation or his reputation as a fair and impartial leader, and it certainly damages the school's reputation of ensuring that we're involving parents as much as we possibly can within limits and when it's appropriate. Now we have my choice. First off, I would definitely need to spend some time talking to the superintendent. I need to find out, how he or she feels about what's going on here and what those policies are. I'm also going to need to spend some time talking to the new parent organization and talking about how I would definitely want to include them, but there are some limits on how they can be included, especially with inclusion of student data, how teachers are evaluated, and there are some limits to how they can be involved, although I would still very much want them involved. I would also spend the time talking to the president and try to gain a relationship with this young attorney and see if we can come to some mutual understanding about how we can work together. And then also with the parent committees. I think that what they're choosing to do obviously seems like a very good plan on having the committees. I don't think I want to dissolve those committees in any way, but I am completely uncomfortable with them coming in and doing observations at the school. I think that is very inappropriate. But the thing I would like to do is build what's called a parent panel. So those the parent committees would still stand, they would still be there, could still meet with each other, but each of those committees would be represented on what I'm calling a parent panel, which would consist of myself, other administrators, the president, and representatives from these various committees. And we could then spend some time talking about student data, but student data that would not be individualized. And we could definitely look at how, say, one grade is doing on state assessments, and looking at that overall data and making sure that we're ensuring confidentiality for all the students in the building. I would also like to have a building leadership team if one doesn't exist. And from the parent panel, I would include at minimal, probably maximum, 3 parents from that to be on that building leadership team, which would also, this is where we would include staff members. I do completely agree in the parent trainings. I think that those need to be there. But we have to also work in the realms of the negotiated agreement for your staff. So the pros to this is it maintains your reputation as a fair and impartial leader. You do have appropriate parent involvement, and it maintains those relationships. The cons are it takes time to set up the parent panel and the building leadership team. So now let's talk about the implementation of my decision. First of all, I'm going to need to check board policies on parent involvement, parent observations, discipline, teacher performance, student data, and committees. Next, I would have to have a long and lengthy discussion with the superintendent. I would need to make sure that I continue to communicate with the superintendent on a daily basis via email or in person. I would need to develop and monitor a plan for the creation, including guidelines and norms, and the implementation of this parent panel. This would aid with the parent involvement past the traditional form of parent involvement. It's a venue for parents to express concerns and ideas for change and improvement. Number 4, I'm going to develop and promote and monitor a plan for the creation, if need be, including guidelines and norms and the implementation of a building leadership team. I would have a parent participation in the building concerns, both in curriculum, discipline, and total school performance. We would to ensure the two-way communication between parents, faculty, and staff, and we would also hope that this would also build parent involvement to aid with enhanced community involvement. I would need to have a number of meetings, obviously with my administrative staff, if there is any. Have a meeting with the president of the new parent organization, meetings with the new parent organization committees, multiple meetings with the parent panel, and to maybe even create a mission and vision statement on what you want that to look like. And also multiple meetings throughout the year, obviously with both the parent panel and the building leadership team. I need to create a public statement concerning the parent panel and the building leadership team and place this in a local newspaper along with our school website and any social media platforms that we use. Next, I need to be flexible because change is challenging and it takes time. So here are a list of my resources. They were many. To make sure that I could look these up and make sure that all of the legal issues were covered. So I believe that is it. So thank you for the time and listening to my very lengthy presentation of my case study. So thanks for your time.